2, 3, 4.
Hey, what's up? I'm Eric.
I'm Wendy.
Welcome to the Hauntological Society. Here we are again for episode number 2. Those of you who made it through the first episode, I appreciate you taking the time to come back and check us out again. We got a doozy story for you. How you feeling today, Wendy?
I'm feeling great.
So, over the weekend we did a thing. We went to the Paranormal Cirque 3 in Charlotte. What did you think about that, Wendy?
I thought it was pretty cool. It was the burlesque circus.
It's kind of like a Cirque du Soleil set to the theme of horror movies and paranormal. Lots of like acrobatic acts, theatrics. It was really cool. It was underneath a tent. It's the first time I've ever been to a circus under a tent. I just saw it on a whim and I got tickets for it. So if anybody gets a chance to go see that, check it out. It's really, really cool. Also, what did we do? Oh yeah, we watched a new Project Fear episode this weekend. What'd you think about that?
Great, featuring Sam and Colby. So two of our favorite in one episode.
Yeah, they were at the Nevada State Prison doing their alone time. It was pretty cool to see them, Sam and Colby, go out and try to sleep alone in a pretty scary place. They look a little bit out of their element because they're normally like buddy up.
And there was a lot of activity for all of them. So it was a pretty happening episode.
Oh yeah, I love activity. But anyway, so last time, we kind of talked about started getting into the history of how people perceive Satan in religion today and in culture, and it's all building up to a big finale that we're going to do next week. But today, I want to kind of get into the idea of start talking about the satanic panic. Now, for those of you who didn't check it out, go check out our first episode last week. I had to release it in 2 parts because this being our first foray into podcasting, I sort of messed up the audio. So what I had to do was we recorded it as a quote-unquote bonus episode at midnight last night so that you guys could get the full episode. So we're trying, give us a little chance, but we're getting there. So when you go listen to the episode, just listen to the first half, and then when the audio botches, just go listen to the bonus episode, and you basically got the full episode. So you guys didn't miss anything, and I appreciate you taking the time to just check it out. But anyway, here we go. We're going to get into it. And like I was saying, the satanic panic, it really was almost like it's a modern day witch hunt, where people start singling out individuals just because of instead of like coming up with a full idea, a full without investigating, they would just brush it off as ritualistic cult, base it on Satan. It's the exact same thing that was happening in the Salem witch trials back in the 1600s. The Salem witch trials started because of a land feud, and I think maybe there were some farm animals involved. I can't quite remember off the top of my head. But these two people started fighting, and so all of a sudden this one person accuses another person of being a witch, and because of the way the law was written, they had to take it seriously. And so all these people went to trial. There were these young girls who were accusing them of being witches, and they would go into the courtroom and fake like being possessed. They would have all these wild tales, and a lot. I think over 100 people died. I can't remember exactly the number. It was a lot of people that died that should not have died. Innocent people, just because someone had a personal feud with them. And so that's sort of how the satanic panic happened in the 70s and 80s. People didn't necessarily die because of it, but their lives were definitely ruined. These people went to jail because of what people thought of them as being Satanist or ritualistic. And in fact, all the people who were accused later on in time, we'll get back to that. We're getting ahead of ourselves. So let's find out.
Some of them were also musicians.
Well, yeah. So the musicians, though, actually was part that helped push the satanic panic. It kind of helped build up. And that's a good place to start into our story here. It's actually kind of where we're going. Now, I'm going to back up a little bit. I said the Satanic Panic happened in the 80s and 90s and 70s, but I'm going to go back just a quick second to the Civil War, because during the Civil War, there was a lot of death in this country. There was a lot of people being killed, brother against brother, family against family. Families were torn apart. Sometimes their entire family was destroyed, only leaving like mother and children left behind. A lot of famine, a lot of disease. It was a very nasty time in America. And so people were looking out for answers. They were looking for healing. They were looking for hope that they could still have contact with those people who had passed on, even though they were no longer in their lives. And that's kind of where we're going to start. So just bear with me. I'm never going to back it up, but I want to build up to this narrative. So just stay with me. All right, here we go. So during this time of the Civil War, many families were torn apart. So many lives were lost, including brothers, fathers, uncles, cousins, and sometimes the entire family would be wiped out. Families began looking for ways to find peace with all their sadness and destruction. So in 1849, a group of two sisters showed up called the Fox Sisters from upstate New York. And their journey began when they would tell their mom that they could hear tapping on the wall. And eventually they would invite the neighbors over to experience the tapping as well. They would say, "Come here, check this out, come to our house." And they would say, "Listen to the tapping," and they would ask questions and they would answer. It was said that they could ask a question mostly to count a number, and the spirit would answer with the corresponding number of taps. And the girls became so popular that they would eventually go on tour with their ability, and the girls would become celebrities and created a money-making business. So this is the first time that anything in the paranormal actually kind of becomes like a money-making scheme. It wasn't long before lots of other mediums and spiritualists began performing their own shows, with some basically becoming magic and illusionists, a la Houdini. He was one of those that got started into it. He was interested in what they were doing. Because he got interested in what they're doing, he decided that he felt like people were being scammed, people were being schemed, and he decided that he wanted to set out and prove these people wrong. He believed that he could pull off any of their tricks that they were doing just the same. And so he would go around the country finding these different mediums who were performing, go to their shows, and then he would like call them out as frauds by producing the same results.
Were they in fact frauds?
Yes,
Okay.
they were very much frauds. And it wasn't long after Houdini began a career of exposing mediums as fraudulent. And in 1888, the Fox sisters finally confessed to creating a hoax and explained the tapping noises came from their abilities to snap their joints. It's true. They would ask questions and they were able to snap their joints to a point where it would like they could be like, listen, hear that tapping, and they would actually be popping like their shoulders or something, and people would say, it should be like, it's in the wall. Isn't that crazy?
It is crazy, but people didn't notice that, like, let's say the corresponding number was 8, that they're like, kind of,
Oh,
okay.
it's pretty wild. What was that? Bear with me here. Oh, here we go. It didn't stop people from embracing the idea that it was possible to actually communicate with the dead. People like Mary Lincoln Todd, Queen Victoria after her husband Prince Albert McCann passed, and Sarah Winchester, the heiress to the Winchester rifle fortune. Miss Winchester had a construction being built on her home 24 hours a day so that spirits would get confused and couldn't find a way to her bedroom to patronize her while she slept in her luxurious bed. But Sarah would also hold seances in the same room every night. Even today, this type of seance or spiritualism isn't without controversy, and look no further to Cody and Satori, a la Sam and Colby, which became full circle together. Take a look. They took a lot of flack after showing how they could seemingly get answers from beyond by simply touching hands and asking the spirit to fill out a quote-unquote virtual Ouija board. Now, one thing I find interesting about the Satori and Cody thing is that Cody actually died. He physically died and was brought back to life. And I don't remember the details on what happened, but she says their communication only happens when she connects with Cody. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say they are not frauds, but I'm not going to sit here and say they are frauds. I can't tell you one way or another. But I find it interesting that he actually had an experience with the other side and is able to communicate with spirits by touch. And they claim that the spirits told them that the reason that they're able to find them so easily is that they seem to shine like a lighthouse, almost like they're a beacon. And so I wonder, does he carry a little bit of the other side with him that had a little weird technical difficulty there. My mic fell out of its stand, so I apologize. Anyway, yeah. So as I was saying, like, he's like a little bit of a beacon. They say he's like a lighthouse. What were you saying about that, Wendy?
When people who have like died and been brought back to life through, resuscitation or whatever, that it makes them closer. They're more in tune with the afterlife.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. That's why I think that, like, that's a good way of explaining it. Like they're a lighthouse. Their beacon shines a little brighter. All right. Now fast forward to the 1960s, and you start having the hippie movement pop up, blossoming on Haight-Ashbury in San Francisco, and it was a time of peace and free love. Not only was this movement growing across the U.S., but it became a wave of New Age. With it came a wave of New Age beliefs. Around this time in America, the surge of Christianity that had led the charge of our religions was beginning to lose its grip that it held so tightly since the birth of America. The Muslim faith was beginning to take hold here as well, as Hindu-influenced religions like Hare Krishnas, yogis, and gurus were amassing hordes of young adults and influential children, as well as entire families, would fall into their faith. Everyone was seeking that spiritual nirvana, what seemed like a good idea on paper. Whole communities where everyone would live as one without the concept of modern civilization eventually become dangerous situations for those involved. And a majority of these became cults, where one supreme leader would manipulate his or her followers in such a way that people were willing to give their livelihoods away. All their personal belongings were a part of an ever-happening spiritual retreat in the woods, which some would become so dangerous they even began to kill as an act to protest against society. Most notably, Jim Jones even moved his flock from California to Jonestown in Guyana, where he produced the murder of a U.S. Senator Leo Ryan and 900 plus people who drank poison Kool-Aid in an act of mass suicide. And it's crazy. And this isn't the only time this happens, but it's one of the most notably. I don't believe there's ever been as many people as that at one time. And I forgot that he even killed a U.S. senator. So the U.S. government was in contact with him because of people were fearing for the safety of their family. They thought that their people were in danger. They didn't know what was going on, and so they sent they would send like these teams over to Guyana and would talk to Jim Jones and say, hey, what's happening? What's going on? And they would try to what I guess would be like negotiation talks to get people to come home as if they were being held hostage. And a lot of this talk about suicide started even before Jim left to go to Guyana. And I can't remember how we got the land, but it's a really interesting story. And I think there's some documentaries out, so you should check it out. But meanwhile, while they were doing these talks with the government, they were amassing all these weapons. They were preparing for war. Similar, in Waco, they did kind of the same thing. David Koresh, he started becoming paranoid and felt that the government was coming to get him. He claimed that he was a disciple of Jesus. He was Jesus. I believe he said he actually was Jesus.
Yeah.
And he was, man, they were packed to the brim with guns. Weapons like you would not believe. Which, very similar. That ended up in a terrible outcome as well.
Shootout.
FBI agents died. A couple of the Koreshians got out, but for the majority of it, they died inside with David. Kids, women, everything. But the Jim Jones people did the same thing. They were talking to the government, trying to negotiate, and I believe at one point it actually did erupt into war, on this airport tarmac where they were fighting with, I don't know if it was the local government or insurgents from the U.S. that were trying to bring people home or what it was. But ultimately, it led to over 900 people dying. Once the Senator Ryan was killed, they left his body in the jungle, and they went and took this huge vat and whipped up this Kool-Aid, and they said, "Everybody drink."
So the senator, was he from Guyana or the U.S.?
No, he was a U.S. Senator, and I think he was from California, where Jim had originally been with his people.
So he flew over to kind of speak or be as the peacemaker with Jim Jones to bring his family back or families back?
Yeah, so what it was he, people started asking him for help, and he was kind of like one of the people who organized contact with Jim Jones and would say, we need to get these people home. Like these people are coming to me and saying, they're fearing for their sanity, they're fearing for their safety. They need to get these people home now. And he was one of the forefront people that was, active in bringing them back to the U.S. And so he would go over there, and I think he went over there a couple times and talked to them and kind of made contact with them. But then this last, as time went on, people like Jones began to get more and more paranoid, more and more I guess psychotics, a better word for it. I mean,
afraid they were going to lose their following, maybe?
Well, not that he was afraid of losing his following. He was more afraid that these people were against him, like the way that the government were coming after him. He felt like the world was coming against him. He felt like, these people that get in these situations, like it's even though it's always different, it's almost like they always have the same narrative. The government is after me. There's always that man hiding in the bush listening to what I'm saying. They're always coming after us.
Paranoid.
And I wonder if, when you look into their psyche, if maybe it's because they're, maybe they're a little bit of,
schizophrenic or...
No, I'm saying, they know they're guilty. They know what's going on is wrong. So, we kind of look at these cult leaders and you say, they're out of their mind. They don't know what's going on. But I kind of start thinking, they know exactly what they're doing. Even though they are mentally unstable, you start having that remorse and saying, man, I know I'm holding these people hostage. It's kind of like, I'm having trouble putting into words. Like when you do something wrong, but then you try to cover it up as like oh, I didn't do that, I didn't do this, but it just grows on you and grows from inside, and you start feeling that remorse and that being upset about it. I think that's how these cult leaders start to get, and they start going, well, we know that what we're doing is wrong, but we can't let these people who are following us know the difference, because otherwise, then they're going to turn against us. And that's the whole thing about it. You have to have that manipulation. You have to have that control. Because if anybody who's of their right mind would go somewhere and say, we're going to hold these people hostage, eventually you're going to say, damn, I feel bad because these people are not with their family. They're not at home. They're not where they want to be. I'm forcing them to live in squalor. They can't eat unless I tell them. They can't, go on a walk unless I give them the proper permission. So maybe just a build-up from within. But either way, it never ends good. And they just start to get so super paranoid that they think things like the phone's bugged. There's a guy hiding in, I think one of the stories from Jim Jones is they literally thought CIA agents were literally hiding in the bushes listening to them. And so he started building that narrative, and Jesus Christ. Was that your phone?
It was.
Wow. Crash. So anyway, Jim Jones was a nut. But as I mentioned before, the New Agers of the 60s began exploring astrology, meditation, yoga, etc., which is not a bad thing. And any of those techniques right there, those are not cult activity. I'm not saying that that's cult activity. But it just sort of started morphing into these other forms of being, these other ways of being. Not everybody who was a hippie was a cult member. Not everybody who was a cult member was a hippie. Or maybe they were. But, no. But really, there are some beautiful things that they do, some things that, like I said before, like it sounds good on paper, but when you start amassing into this almost like mass hysteria, that's when it becomes a danger. And so meditation, yoga, they also started using divination tools like tarot cards, which tarot had been around since ancient Egypt. They didn't just come onto the scene. They didn't just show up in the 60s. But, people really started to grasp hold of the idea of using them, maybe even a little bit after the time of the Fox sisters did they pick up. But they started being, more publicly available in the U.S. especially. And so, these tools really took off. People really wanted to have that connect with the other side. And in the 60s, the Vietnam War was going. They had just come out of the Korean conflict. And the Vietnam War was a terrible time for the U.S. as far as, trouble. The people really did not want our U.S. citizens in that war. And they wanted us to leave. And it was a conflict that we were ultimately never able to, come out on top. So it was almost like people lost their lives for nothing. And so it really created this conflict in society, which also ultimately helped build up to the Satanic Panic. Because that conflict is what started driving people apart. Started creating these protests, we had the civil rights movement. People like Dr. Martin Luther King was on the street. They just come out of in the 50s, the students from Alabama, or the early 60s, the students from Alabama who were shot with the water hoses. All these different things are going on. And so all this unrest in society, it all builds up to this one huge idea that eventually, it's going to explode and will turn into this huge witch hunt in the 70s and 80s. But, once the tarot cards took off, people began consulting their horoscope as an idea of what the universe had in store for their day, week, month, or even year based on the location of the planets and stars and how it correlates to their birth charts. But that's another conversation, which we're going to have a conversation about tarot cards here pretty soon and divination tools. And I think I found some pretty interesting people who can give us some insight on that. So stay tuned. I'm not going to give away any details. Now, as I just told you, all this. You're not going to get me this time. You're not going to get me this time. All right. Now, just as I told you all, this because as America enters the 70s, Vietnam is still in the minds of Americans, just like the Civil War. America is looking to speak to those who are lost. The hippies are aging into the next generation, and their movements begin to grow into an eco-friendly political activist and opponents to the son of a bitch, you got me. You got me, damn it. Okay, let me start this over, because fuck it. Now, I just told you all this because as America enters the 70s, Vietnam is still on the minds of Americans, just like the Civil War was back in the 1800s. America is looking to speak to those who are lost. The hippies were aging into the next generation. Their movements began to grow into eco-friendly political activists and opponents. The communes were still running strong, and there was a nomadic sect that had mobilized, complete with its own band, known as the Grateful Dead. But while this was going on, a funny thing was beginning to form, and little did anyone know just how big of an explosion was about to take place. And this thing would change so many lives. I don't think anyone knew just exactly what kind of impact was really growing in the subculture of America, or the subculture of American music we call rock and roll. Now, the Grateful Dead thing is kind of interesting. And I think that's a good. Concept of peaceful hippies. They didn't ever harm anybody, other than the bad brown acid they took at Woodstock. But they drove around, and they moved as a commune. They literally were a nomadic group, traveling the country with their band. They just were it was basically like we just drive around and at the end of the day, our band plays music and we chill with them. You know,
Wherever we land.
I know exactly. Yeah, where your feet hit the ground is where you're at. So it's such an interesting. I just wonder. I can't imagine what it'd be like being on those groups. Like just move. I heard that people had babies with them.
Free love, man.
Free love, yeah. This person was traveling in this VW bus, and the next thing you know, they got to this VW bus, and then their babies were hanging out with these babies who were cousins and brothers who were just hanging out in the last VW bus. And what a wild time.
Big orgy.
Now, was your mom ever a fan of the Grateful Dead?
No.
She never liked the Grateful Dead?
No, not really.
Yeah, my parents never did either. My parents were like, my dad was bluegrass.
Mama was more like a Bob Seger,
yeah.
Rod Stewart.
She was the cool side of rock and roll.
She was.
I never got into to the Grateful Dead, but I love Pink Floyd. Pink Floyd's a little different, but I love that progressive like style. You guys go learn a little bit about me now because as I was growing up, I was always like a metalhead kind of kid. I loved Ozzy. I loved Metallica. My first concert was Megadeth in 1993. What was your first concert?
My first, Plead the Fifth.
No, come on, spill it. Put it out.
My first concert.
Engelbert Humperdinck.
George Jones.
Oh, hell yeah, the possum.
Yeah.
That's okay. All right, that's cool. Yeah, I saw Megadeth in Asheville at Thomas Wolfe Auditorium, of all places, and their opening act was Stone Temple Pilots. Oh, how weird is that? Like they don't even go together, but it was such a cool show, and I'll never forget being in that show. What's the most memorable concert you've ever been to?
As far as stage presence and everything, my favorite concert was probably Metallica.
Okay, which one? Which time did you see them?
For Whom the Bell Tolls.
Oh, really?
That tour.
What year was that?
I would say it was like 1991, 92.
Damn. Okay. So that was probably Black Album tour, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's awesome. Yeah, because I saw Megadeth in '93. It was like December 13th, 1993. And the only reason I remember that is because we bought a bootleg shirt in the parking lot, and it had their album cover of Countdown to Extinction on the front, and on the back, it had the what they call what's his name? Not Eddie, because Eddie is Iron Maiden. I'm drawing a blank on his name, but it had their guy. He's like skeleton wearing like what looks like Ray-Ban shades, who are like it's like screwed to his face, skull face, and had him on the back, and beneath it said with special guests, and it said Stoned Temple Pilots.
I missed the bootleg shirt.
I know. I think I got a bootleg. This is going way left field. I got a bootleg Elton John shirt when I went to see him in Winston-Salem, and it was one of the coolest shirts I ever got.
I would love to see Elton John. I would love to see Elton.
I got to be honest. He was one of the best shows I've ever seen because he would. He came out and did he started out. He was producing. He just put out. I think it was the Georgia Peachtree Road album, which came out in whatever that year that came out is when I saw him. But so for the first part of his set, that's all he played was songs off that album. He's like, we're gonna play songs off the new album, and he's like, then we're gonna take a little break and we'll come back and play everything you know. And so the first hour or so was like him just playing stuff off the new album, and it was cool because he had a big choir, and because he recorded it in Georgia, so it kind of had that Georgia soul feel to it. And then he was like, all right, we'll be back in a sec, and he goes. And when he comes back, he starts that's when he starts his costume changes that he's famous for. And the first thing he played was Benny and the Jets, and it was awesome. But he had this really cool LED screen that was behind him, and it looked like strands of LEDs, made into a giant curtain. Mm-hmm. And then as the show would go on, it would show different things back there. It was really, really cool. Yeah, Elton was up. It's up there one of the coolest things I've ever seen. Oh, also, and he did like an intermission, and to people who were sitting in the front row, he stopped and took the time to like sign autographs.
Oh, wow.
How cool is that? Like nobody does that. Freaking Elton John, legend. But back when rock and roll was like hitting the scene and becoming like the deal, bands like the Kinks, the Who, Animals, the Doors, so many others were following in the footsteps of Buddy Holly and this kid named Elvis. You might have heard from him, out of Tupelo, Mississippi. You know what I'm talking about?
I know what you're talking about.
I love Elvis. How do you feel about Elvis?
I was never really a big Elvis fan per se, but I do like some
Blasphemy.
of his music.
Blasphemy. I fucking love Elvis. I don't know what it is. There's something about that guy that I love. He's like, and I watch this movie like every once in a while, and all these documentaries on him, and I would go on his kick and listen to Elvis, and the King, baby.
The King of Tupelo.
King of Tupelo. Not those guys though.
I know.
Those guys. Woo. We might talk about those guys. Jesus. If you haven't seen the documentary, watch it. It's nuts. On Netflix. Kings of Tupelo. Same guy who made it was the guy who directed Tiger King. Do you know that?
I did not, but I can see how they're a lot alike.
He likes those wacky documentaries. Not long after Elvis, bands like Led Zeppelin appeared. Led Zeppelin appears just after Jimmy Page finishes The Byrds. What's weird is you see there's a weird step up from The Byrds to Led Zeppelin. And The Byrds are awesome. If you've never listened to The Byrds, listen to them. They're a supergroup before supergroups. But then Page breaks off and creates Led Zeppelin. And Led Zeppelin really kind of starts to form what I consider modern rock and roll today. And you got people like John Bonham, the godfather or the grandfather of modern day drumming. Because if you listen to drumming before John Bonham broke on the scene, they would have simple beats. Wasn't too intricate. They just kind of kept it simple. But once John Bonham showed up, they started doing the modern day offbeat drumming. He was like an octopus. The guy had 8 arms, and he was so drunk while doing it. And he was the best freaking drummer. Nobody hit harder than John Bonham. Long live the king of drums right there. John Bonham forever. Jeez. With him, like I said, with him he brings John Bonham, the godfather of modern drumming, which I just said. And no one seems to rock harder than Zeppelin. But they even had lyrics of love, sex, mixed with Vikings and elves. Drawing influence from Aleister Crowley, Zeppelin was cutting edge until the world was introduced to none other than, can you guess? Can you guess? You guess?
Ozzy Osbourne.
That's right. Black Sabbath and John Ozzy Osbourne. With their heavy, detuned guitars and dark lyrics, they were on a crash course with the devil. No one had ever witnessed anything like this. Hell, Ozzy even bit the head of a live bat on stage. It was an accident, by the way. He didn't mean to, but later on there was a press conference where he was purposely given a dove, and he also bit the head off the dove. He did that for shock value.
Oh, wow.
Yep, yeah.
I didn't know that.
Well, he was so high on barbiturates, cocaine,
Acid.
everything. Ozzy was in it. So he says he regrets the bat. He didn't know what. And the story of the bat is actually, while they were doing their show, they were throwing rubber bats onto the stage, and I don't know if it was part of their show or what the fans were doing, but at some point, somebody literally threw a live bat on the stage, and Ozzy picked it up thinking it was a rubber bat and bit the head off of it, and it was a real bat.
Wow.
He says to this day, he said, I did not know what I was doing. I did not mean to do it. But it's kind of crazy because he rode with it. It got him attention and fame. And so when they gave him the dove, he was just like, well, fuck it, That's crazy.
What was the dove supposed to?
I don't know why they brought the dove to a press conference, but they gave it to Ozzy. I mean, if you're taunting him about biting a head off a bat and then you give him a dove, I mean, what do you expect? It's not really Ozzy's fault. He didn't bring the dove.
Right.
I mean, there's a photo and it's afterwards, and you don't really see it, but you could tell he's got blood on his mouth. But
I know that picture.
yeah, that's a famous photo. It really happened. Like I said, Ozzy isn't the type of person who seeks out and sacrifices small woodland animals. And if you don't know or you don't believe me, just watch how he treats his little Pomeranian on his various TV shows. But, he knew that he would get attention and fame, and boy, did he ever. And this was a spark the world needed. Bands like Judas Priest, Blue Oyster Cult, Iron Maiden, Slayer, and Motley Crue followed Ozzy's lead. They used Satan and satanic imagery to sell albums. To them, this wasn't just about Satan, though. It was about pushing the boundaries, just like Ozzy, stepping outside the norm, creating a controversy that we all know, and we all know the controversy will generate sales. And if your parents said no way, then by God, that kid is going to buy that album. I mean, just think like you tell me about Zach trying to buy Marilyn Manson albums.
Yes.
If you tell him no, what's he going to do? He's going to
do
buy
it anyway.
He's going to buy that album. And these people were using that as a way to sell albums. And it worked.
Kiss is the big one.
Kiss.
Because their makeup and, their stage presence was a little off-putting back then. So.
And their music is not satanic, my God. I remember I remember seeing Kiss, and I was like, God, they look badass. And then I listened to their album, and I'm like, what the hell is this? Put the X in sex? What? This is not Kiss, Yeah, parents were like, Knights in Satan's Service. The guy who came up with that anagram was genius. Yeah, exactly, Kiss. It's the same thing. My God, the amount of money that Kiss generated just from sales of like dolls and I mean, their faces on everything. I saw this guy had a Kiss coffin. Kiss, they got pinball machines, cereal. I mean, they're everywhere. And their marketing worked because they were pushed as a satanic band, and they're freaking Jewish.
Play their record backwards, and the devil, summons demons.
Yes. Now, while the music industry was embracing the dark side, a power couple arrived on the paranormal scene. We call them the Warrens. Ed and Lorraine Warren. Now, I'm not going to go into great detail about them, but nonetheless, they had a fair share of controversy that followed them around. Now, if you want a really good deep look into Ed and Lorraine Warren, check out the Haunted Podcast with Greg and Dana Newkirk. They do an excellent deep dive into Ed and Lorraine, and they kind of go into the darker side of what was really going on behind the scenes. And probably one of the most informative episodes on Ed and Lorraine that you'll ever hear. They pushed the narrative of demonic hauntings. Ed Warren was a self-proclaimed demonologist who would frequent the TV circuits, published a couple books for profit, and created a paranormal museum long before Zach Bagans was even a thought. Ed and Lorraine were known to create fear by inserting themselves into a haunted location and claim it was infested with demons and required an exorcism that sometimes Ed would perform on his own without the blessings of the Catholic Church. Now, if you know anything about exorcisms, you have to have permission from the diocese because the Catholic Church is the one that sanctions the exorcisms. Now, Ed would go around to these places and say, oh, this haunting you have in your house, well, it's a demon. And so the only way we can deal with this demon is by God. And so we're going to have to perform these exorcisms. And he would have I believe they had like a priest or something that would work with them, or a so-called priest. I don't know exactly how it was, but he would have these people that worked with him. And they would go in and say, oh yeah, these people need such and such, blah, blah, they need to exorcism. And then they would claim that they would have the permission from the Vatican to do it. And Ed would perform these half-assed exorcism on these people and say, you're cleansed.
And sometimes did it not make matters worse?
100%. You can't go around saying you're going to cleanse a spirit out of there, even if you claim it's demonic, and then just half-assed do it and say, well, that's it. My hands are clean. I'm walking out of here, And so they really pushed this narrative that they had the ability to banish demons at any time with their will, and they were always making things worse. And they did not hesitate to force themselves into situations where they probably weren't needed. A lot of times they would hear about these hauntings from a friend or another person, and they would go and insert themselves into the situation and say, oh, we're here, don't worry about it, and kind of take control of it and sort of become the quote-unquote forefront of what's going on. It would become like a spectacle. And look no further than the Amityville, because later on, it was proven that they corroborated with this guy who wrote a book It became one of the bestseller, like New York Times bestseller. Become like 3 movies or more. It's helped like push the Conjuring series, which we have out today. By the way, the Conjuring series, even though I don't particularly care for Ed and Lorraine, I do like those movies. They're good movies. But the whole point is that they are pushing these narratives for profit, and that's kind of like because of that, it really helps fuel the fear later on in life. You get that? Okay. So as they're pushing the narrative, it just grows and builds. It becomes something more than it doesn't need to. And so Ed and Lorraine are Ed and Lorraine. No, I kind of feel that Lorraine has some abilities. I feel that she might actually be a psychic. But I feel like she's pushed into this world from Ed. And I'm not saying Ed's the total instigator, because I think they had to corroborate. But they definitely fed off each other. And even if Lorraine was a true psychic, she didn't allow her abilities to be used to the best of their ability. And even later on in her life, she was still like showing up on TV, Paranormal State and stuff, probably for profit. I hate to say that because I don't really necessarily hate Lorraine, because you kind of have to look at them as pioneers, but the things they did were not the right way. The way that I understand it was like they were so close to coming to the truth, and then would take a left-hand turn, and it just made things so much worse. Maybe we'll talk about the story of Annabelle one day, because Annabelle's not what you think it is. Even Ed Warren himself said he doesn't believe that demons can insert themselves into non-living entities. They're more just an attachment on the back of the doll, and they manipulate the doll kind of like a puppet. And I find that statement kind of interesting, because that's sort of how the Japanese people view demonics. They don't think that you're infested with it or anything like that, but they believe that it's kind of attached to you from the outside and manipulates you from an outside source. Like I said, the story of Amityville is a known hoax, and Ed even said that once that demons are not infested. Yeah, that's what I just said. I'm getting ahead of what I wrote. I do apologize. But in 1968, they were moving on from music to movies. Now, in 1968, a movie called Rosemary's Baby was released, about a woman who is drugged and inseminated with a child of Satan. She's held captive by a group of Satanists who wants the baby for their own personal agenda. Now, this is one of the movies that, to this day, it's one of the only movies that actually scares me. It takes a lot for a movie to scare me. I might get a jump scare, but there's something about Rosemary's Baby that just scares the shit out of me. You said you've never seen it?
I've never seen it.
We'll have to watch it, but I just told you the premise of it. You basically know what's going on. But I think what scares me about it is that it's not the concept of Satan in it, but it's the fact of how she's held captive, how they manipulated everything around her to keep her from escaping and running away. Like everywhere she goes, she's got nowhere to go, and it's like these people who are part of your everyday life, and people that you would see that you would not think are part of this cult or whatever. And everybody's in on it. And she's like, how do I get away from this? And to me, just that idea of that is like so freaking scary. I don't know. Nowhere to run. Nowhere to go. Yep. No one to call. Even when she calls people on the phone, they're part of their people. If you've never seen Rosemary's Baby, check it out for sure. But in 1977, a movie called Suspiria was released, about a woman who joins a dance studio that is owned by a coven of witches. Have you seen this?
No. What'd you say the name of that
Suspiria?
No, I haven't.
It's a Rosario D'Argento movie. He's a famous Italian director. Suspiria is known as one of the forefront horror movies. Like I said, this young lady joins a dance studio, thinks she's moving in to it's part of a live-in dance studio, and it turns out it's a group of witches trying to
build their coven?
Use them for rituals, yeah. Now, trigger warning on this. This is rough. This movie features one of the craziest scenes I've ever seen in my life. the main character is trying to escape from the dance studio, and she's crawling in the air ducts, where she falls into a room that has been filled with razor wire. And as you can imagine, it went downhill from there. This movie was so popular, it actually had a remake back in 2000, probably in the 2010s, I think. I didn't see it because I'm not particularly a huge fan of like remakes sometimes, but I mean, it was popular enough to like bring it back. Maybe we'll watch. Well, one day, maybe one day we'll have like a old movie day and check out.
That'd be great.
But you know, these two movies are nothing compared to the granddaddy of them all. And although I still say Rosemary's Baby has been the only movie that still freaks me out, there's one other. You know what I'm talking about?
Dun, dun, dun. Yes, I know what you're talking about.
So, on Christmas Day, 1973, not a coincidence, The Exorcist was summoned to theaters. It follows a young woman and her daughter Reagan, who live in the house in Georgetown, where her daughter becomes possessed by the demon Pazuzu, not Satan. In fact, the statue that you see in the movie is an actual statue of what's believed to be a Pazuzu demon. So like a little winged creature, and I believe it comes from Samaria. Features multiple attacks on priests in various blasphemous ways, and it even includes a Ouija board. All of these factors from this movie and everything I've mentioned before have been ingrained into the psyche of American subculture that demons are everywhere. Ouija boards are a portal to the devil, and rock and roll and heavy metal are tools of Satan to subliminally brainwash our youth into becoming servants of the Dark Lord. Even the Beatles themselves were not absent from this, for if you reverse some of their lyrics, it even says Paul is dead and Satan is your friend on the White Album. How about that? The beloved Beatles. Even they're in on this.
Was that intentional?
No, it was not intentional. I kind of wonder if it was maybe, because you know, why would they put Paul is dead on there? Because Paul is obviously not dead.
Right.
No, there are some groups out there who intentionally put reverse lyrics into their music because of this phenomenon. But I think it's more of just when you play syllables backwards, you know, they just happen to form words.
Right.
And I just think it's you know, there's a big debate about this. Like, is it subconsciously creating the words that we hear, or is it just by mere coincidence? You know, are you? If I'm singing a song, with dark lyrics, and then I play it backwards and it says "Satan is your friend," is that my subconscious projecting onto the music, or is that just mere coincidence that I'm saying things that would equal out those words?
I think it's mere coincidence.
Could be. But when you start doing things about projecting your consciousness on things, you can manifest things in a very peculiar way. But so anyway, I think this is a good place to stop because next time I would like to talk about the true height of satanic panic. That's when we're really going to get into the meat of how people's lives are affected. We're going to start talking about the trials and all the people who are accused of being Satanists, cultists, and how their lives were turned upside down just because people thought they were part of the devilish cult, taking part in ritualistic killings of babies and animals, and would actually put on trial for it. And so many lives were ruined because of this modern day witch hunt. That's what I got. Did you know that The Exorcist was based on a true story?
Yes, I did.
The story of what they call the exorcism of Roland Doe. I can't remember his name right now. I won't say it, but you can look it up. It's out there. Did you know that when he grew up, he actually became a NASA scientist?
I did not.
He was one of the people in the team to help put man on the moon, and from what I understood, was like still working at NASA today.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
That is very crazy.
He's still out there. Another movie that I did mention, which is interesting, is The Exorcism of Emily Rose. Did you know about this one?
Yeah, we watched it.
Mm-hmm. Did you know it's based on true story?
I did, yes.
Yeah. It's based on a young lady in Germany who became what they say was possessed with the devil, died from an exorcism, and then there was a trial, just like in the movie. And it was one of the first times that demonic possession was used in a court of law to try to like as a defense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oddly enough, dealing with Ed and Lorraine, you have the more modern day Devil Made Me Do It trial with Arnie. What the hell's his last name? I'm drawing on blank. I can't think right now. But Arnie, I want to say Powell, that's not right. Arnie. Anyway, Arnie, this guy named Arnie, supposedly became possessed with the devil and killed one of his good friends in a fight at their house. But that's another, like, situation where, the influence of Satan is put in the modern day, culture. So, what do you think? Any thoughts?
No, The Exorcist kept me up many nights. That was the first, I guess, really scary movie that really got my wheels turning or, scared me into like backing away from things. So
one of the things I liked about The Exorcist is the little subliminal shots that you get of the demon throughout the movie. It's actually, I think, a woman in makeup. She's got black makeup on, but you can just kind of see her face. She'll pop up randomly throughout the movie. And it was meant to like show you that the devil is always present in the movie, even when you don't see him on screen.
Where would she pop up?
I can show you pictures of it. You can look it up at the demonic face that pops up, but she would just pop up randomly in the middle of scenes. Okay. It would be kind of like, it would show like, Reagan or whatever, and then like the face would flash on screen and then disappear and then go back to like Reagan and him. And it would, a lot of times it happened so fast, you might not even think about what you were seeing, but it was getting into your subliminal psyche of, you, even though it did register, it's like, hey, I just saw a demon. You start going, this demon's always around. It's always there. It's popping up at any time. So, and I went to the steps in Georgetown where they filmed the scene where the priest fell down the steps.
Yep.
Pretty cool. We passed it going to the National Zoo, and I had to go by there and be like, oh, the Exorcist steps. Pretty cool. Another example of that is the movie that came out recently, Nicolas Cage, Longlegs, which, remember when we were watching, I kept saying that there's like, 13 times you could see the devil in the background?
Yes.
And being an ADH kid, I always watch the backgrounds of stuff. Especially since we watch all the paranormal shows, I'm always watching the background, trying to find things that happen. And so while we were watching that, I'd be like, oh, there he is. And Wendy'd be like, what are you talking about?
Where?
Yeah. What happened, So. But, yeah, I think that's a good place to leave you. I think it's been a good episode. I appreciate you guys coming back and listening to us again. We're going to keep growing, getting better. Hopefully, we'll get our act together one day. But everything's cool. I really enjoy doing this, and I hope that we can keep going forward. So if you would, give us a rate and review on all your favorite platforms, wherever you listen to this, because it helps us get more listeners. It's imperative, because the more you rate it, the more you review it, the more we move up the charts, the more people get a chance to hear what we're trying to say. And hopefully we can continue to let this grow. Follow us on, I put a Facebook page out right now, the Hauntological Society Podcast. Check it out. Right now we're only on Facebook, but I'm looking into adding stuff to our YouTube page, growing that a little bit, and we'll probably hit other social media platforms as we grow. So we'll get there. We just need your help so that we can grow and get to all these places. Also, I set up an email. It's the Hauntological Society Podcast at gmail.com. Send me your ghost stories, cryptid stories, alien stories. The weirder the story you got, I want to hear it. No story's too weird, no story's too strange. I want it all. And if you have questions about what's happening in your house, send me your questions. Maybe we can help you figure out what's going on. Maybe we can get you in touch with the right people who know how to get this out of your life if you want it. So I think we're all going to grow together, and we're all going to see what's going on. Anything else, Woody?
I'm good.
All right. Well, I guess she's good. I'm good. I'm Eric.
I'm Wendy.
We're out of here.